Hey, Mitch.
Oh, hey, Ed, what are you doing?
Oh, I'm just polishing my broadsword.
Polishing your what?
My broadsword. I got this when I was traveling in Scotland in the 1500s. I mean, it was passed down to me when I was, traveling at 3 o'clock, 1500. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. Can I see it?
It's really sharp. I'd be careful. You right?
Okay. Yeah, all right.
Well, at least I've improved your voice. Oh no. Hi, this is Ed Dollister,
This is Mitch Halleck.
and welcome to another exciting episode of Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventure. If it's your first time here, thanks so much for joining us. If you are a regular viewer, thanks so much for coming back. Before we start on today's fantastic topic, what can you do to find out a little bit more about the show, Mitch?
Oh, Ed, all you'd have to do is subscribe, and that's as easy as being alive for centuries and not knowing that you're an eternal whatever. All you do is hit the subscribe button below, and you will be subscribed to the show. And if you want to be notified, so you don't have to miss another episode, hit the bell there, and we'll notify you. And on top of all that, just hit the like button that you see down there, because it means that Ed and I are actually doing a good job, and we'll continue to do so, like we're about to do now as we embark on a journey into immortality with the Highlander.
That's right. Highlander, a film that came out in 1986. It's sort of considered it's certainly a cult movie. It didn't do well on its release. It didn't make I think it made about $11 million off a $19 million budget, but it has spawned sequels and anime and quite a reasonably long running television series. Did you go see Highlander in the movies when it came out?
I did. Myself and three other people were the only ones in the theater that day, and I didn't know what to expect. And I went mostly because I was a Sean Connery fan and he was in this film, and that's why I went to see it. So I went to the theater not knowing what it was going to be, and I was pleasantly surprised by what unfolded on the screen there. Christopher Lambert, who I knew from Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, years earlier, was the star of the movie. And yeah, I didn't know it was going to be about swordplay, immortality, people that live forever getting their heads chopped off. It was a fun-filled movie. And the only thing I did recall about it is, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, is I believe the director of the movie has some kind of connection to music videos, I think.
Yep. So he's an Australian director. So I remember when it came out, I got to see it in the movies as well. I was 16, and I think they publicized it in Australia. It's directed by Australia's Russell Mulcahy. And Russell Mulcahy used to do a lot of, rock videos, video music clips and things like that. So he had a really interesting style. I suppose like Michael Bay, I think, started in that way as well, doing commercials and rock videos. And he had Russell Mulcahy had a really interesting style. And in 1984, he directed a film in Australia called Razorback. And Razorback, I think it was 84. Razorback starred Gregory Harrison, the American actor. You'd remember he was
Gonzo Gates from Trapper John MV.
Yeah. So they brought him in. It was set, and it was basically it was like Jaws indoors, I suppose, but with, instead of a shark, it was a giant bush pig. And that was terrorizing outback Australia, and that was very stylized and everything like that. And I think that's what got him noticed. He was it was a low budget film, but it had quite a stylish look to it, and I think that's what Russell Mulcahy brought to it. I really enjoyed Highlander because of Russell Mulcahy's direction, and followed him afterwards because I know him really from directing The Shadow. Right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
So he has certainly got a flair. And one thing that I just rewatched Highlander yesterday, just to reignite some of those neurons, and I forgot about that wonderful opening in Madison Square Garden with the wrestling and how they sort of juxtaposed it with the time in ancient
Mhm.
Scotland in the battle, but that wonderful sweeping camera as it
Mhm.
flies through the Madison Square Garden, and then there's a quick cut that you couldn't really tell, but you could tell, and it closes up on Russell Nash with the light on his eyes, where Christopher Lambert is looking very intense. Not because
Mhm.
he's probably that intense, but because he's really nearsighted and couldn't see
Can't
properly.
see. Yeah, he's got myopia.
That's
Yeah.
right. But yeah, so that's one thing I suppose that really stood out to me from the film was his direction. Though he used really interesting transitions from, like
Mhm.
a fish tank, and it would go up to underwater, and that great shot of there's a close up on Russell Nash's face, and it transitions to the Mona Lisa, and there's some really
Mhm.
interesting shots, some sweeping shots. It's really quite good, and it's a really exciting story. I'm surprised it didn't do um very well, because it was kind of a unique take on it. Gregory
Well,
Wyden, who wrote the screenplay, came up with the idea while he was studying in UCLA, and he saw the film The Duelists, the Ridley Scott film about these two people who were dueling throughout their lives, essentially. And he thought,
yeah.
could you imagine if you were dueling throughout time? And that's where he sort of came up with the concept. But as you said, it had some great cast members: Christopher Lambert, and Sean Connery as Ramirez, with the most interesting Spanish. He's
Yeah.
actually Egyptian in it, but
Yeah.
an interesting Spanish accent of Sean Connery's.
Mhm. No, and I was gonna say the other thing I remember seeing, it was very comic booky because there wasn't like nowadays where there's a comic book movie every 15 minutes. But at the time I saw it because it had the time travel element to it, which I was, I like that. It had the sword play in it because at the time in the 80s, we had movies like Conan the Barbarian,
Mhm.
The Sword and the Sorcerer, Crow. We had a lot of sword play going on in films. Lady Hawk was another movie that I really liked
Yes.
back in the day. We'll have to do that one day too. But so I went to see the movie, and like you said, it was very stylized, and anime wasn't a thing at that point. I mean, it was out there, but it wasn't, of course, like widespread like it is now. But the whole quick cutting and the editing of this
Mhm.
movie, I don't think it's more than 90 minutes. It's not that long, is it?
No, it's a reasonably short. I think it's
Yeah.
just yeah, it's probably just a little bit over an hour and a half, but it's not.
Yeah. So
It
it's,
doesn't
yeah, it was.
feel like a long film for sure.
No, that's what I'm saying. It moved very quickly, and the backstory was really cool, and it had a lot of interesting characters, and it's so much so that I would read magazines like Starlog and Fantastic Films, and they'd have a lot of, because there was no documentaries and YouTube, so you'd go read about the films, and there was a lot of stuff cut from Highlander when the movie came out, and there was a
Yeah,
lot of
certainly
backstory
in
because
that's certainly in the that's sparked a memory in the.
yeah, the
I think the
secretary,
American release was only 111 minutes, and
yeah,
the like the UK and Australian
the
release was about
European cut,
119 minutes. And they
yeah. Well,
cut
there,
out a lot of the some of the humor, the
yes,
whole backstory with Rachel, where
the
he's
secretary being in World
where he
War
say
II,
yeah, where he say that
yeah.
was cut for some
That was
reason.
no, I didn't know anything about that until I got the VHS
Yes.
because there's no DVD yet. And then they had that deleted scene. And I'm like, oh, what is this? And there was like a couple minutes of him rescuing her from a concentration camp and something like that, or Nazis. And then
Yeah,
she was a
so
little girl.
basically,
And then,
he saves her and gets shot, and that's where he says, she, he gets shot by a Nazi, falls down
yeah,
while saving her, and she goes, "Oh, you're still alive." She's only a little girl, and goes, "It's a kind of magic," which ties in to the Amazing Queen soundtrack, which we'll talk about in a
yeah.
moment.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and it gives a reason, it just adds to the character development and story.
No,
So
no.
yeah, I know that
Yeah,
Russell Mulcahy couldn't understand why they decided to,
I don't
the
know.
producers or company decided to cut that out. So
Well, I'll tell you one of the other things that was interesting about that is I liked his character was an art dealer because he'd been alive so long, he would know about art and culture because he
yep.
lived through all these different art periods. But one of the things I gotta say up front about Christopher Lambert is I know he just grunted a little bit here and there in Tarzan, which was fine because it was about a man that was raised by apes and didn't have a
Mhm.
lot of vocal skills. I don't know what accent this man has in this movie. I know he was born in America. He was raised in France, I believe, the actor. But in the movie, I don't know if they dubbed things over there when it came out, but here it was a struggle to hear what he was saying at first because you have to get used to the dialect, and I don't know where it was. And I go, is that intentional? Were they trying to make it sound like you couldn't tell what country he was from because
Well,
he's
sort
from
of. He didn't.
all the different years, or that's just his normal voice?
Well, he didn't. When they cast him, he actually didn't speak English very well, if at all. He sort of was just learnt on Greystoke, which was 84. So that was, just a few years earlier. So he actually learnt to speak English for certainly fluently for this film. And also he wanted to make sure that because he was a man through time, he didn't want to be able to be pinpointed with a specific accent because you assumed he traveled all around. So that's why he's got a sort of a nondescript accent. You can't really pinpoint it. So
no, that was always interesting too. And then of course we mentioned Sean Connery, who I don't think really cared if he didn't have an accent or whatever he did too. But speaking of the opening of the movie, did you know that little crawl that comes up that you hear Sean Connery do we are Highlanders, we were born from this and that? Do you know that amazing echo that you hear on the opening speech? You know why that's there?
Because he filmed it in his bathroom.
He recorded it in his bath. I don't know if he filmed it, but he recorded it in his bathroom, holding the script, and maybe he had a microphone in the other. But that's why you get that echo effect because he's like in his bathtub or whatever. But yeah, I was like, huh. Once you hear that and know that, you can never unforget it or unhear it because
hopefully he was fully clothed while he was
fully. He might have been in his shorts at the time too.
Well,
it always reminds me of the sound effect in Raiders of the Lost Ark when they lift up the Ark. It's the back of a toilet tank.
Yes,
I can never unhear that when I fix something on the toilet. I go, it's the Ark of the Covenant. But anyway, back to the movie. One of the breakout performances, and it's somebody that I'm going to know for years because my kids loved SpongeBob SquarePants, is Clancy Brown as the Kurgan, who was one of the most terrifying villains in, I don't know, at the time in the 80s. I was like, the whole punk rock look and the piercings in the head, and then the bad scar across the chest or the neck. That was just like something to see. And he's got that delivery voice, like, hey, what are you doing? He talks like that all the time. But years later, my kids would watch cartoon shows and I'd say, hey, you know who that is? And they're like, Clancy Brown. I'm like, yeah, but he was the bad guy in this movie. And then he was in Starship Troopers right after this. And I think I started noticing him more and more, but he's got that distinctive sound. He was great.
He was terrifying. He was, I always found him to be absolutely terrifying. And especially in the Kurgan, his armor, the skull armor that he was wearing. And when it's funny because I remember when Willow came out in 88, 2 years later, and I can't think of the name of the bad guy in Willow at the moment.
But you mean the one that the Raiders Lost Ark guy played?
Yes, he had similar looking armor. I felt.
Yeah.
And I'm going, someone's seen Highlander. But you had some. Roxanne Hart played Brenda, who was looking the police investigator who basically, was working out all the clues about what's going on. You know what? I forgot. I forgot that playing Lieutenant Frank Moran in it was Alan North. Now, the funny thing about him being the police chief or policeman in charge of the investigation, if you've watched the Naked Gun of the Police Squad TV series.
Yeah, Leslie Nielsen. Yeah,
he's the police chief.
Oh, he
plays Ed in that. So
now I forgot all about him, but no, I know exactly. I could see.
So he wasn't in the movies because they got Gerard Kennedy. No, not Gerard.
George Kennedy.
George
Kennedy on the TV show.
Yes. Yeah, no. But it's pretty hilarious because he's playing this. You just expect something to go wrong with it. So you had Alan North in there. You had Hugh Quashie, that you might know from
Captain Panaka.
Panaka, yeah. So he was one of the Immortals. And there was also the guy. It's funny, the guy I've forgotten his name, who was the Vietnam vet, who basically shoots up the Kurgan in the alley, is Zev from The Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, good shooting. Oh, you mean the one that wanted to take on the Empire all by himself?
No, that's Dak.
Dak. You're talking about the one that when they shot the walker, that one, good shooting. That guy.
Yeah, the one who finds
That's Wedge.
Han and Luke, on the
Yeah,
reconnaissance.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Brother
so he's in it.
Jansen was Wedge.
And you
Anyway,
had
yeah,
the,
we can go on about that.
yeah, and you had the gorgeous Beatrice Edney as Heather.
Yes. Yes.
Who he got to grow old with. Well, he didn't she grew old. He just stayed, hunky as
exactly.
Christopher Lambert
Hunky.
did. It had some really interesting lighting effects. The visual effects were not too bad, but unfortunately, watching it today in high def, what it really needs is some wire removal, because during the
you could see the wires.
You can really see the wires, and they actually added the lightning sort of to disguise the wires, but unfortunately, it sort of accentuated them a little bit.
I was gonna say, yeah, I didn't know that, because I remember just watching it on the theater and then on a fuzzy VHS. You didn't see all that, but really, you can see all the imperfections now. Oh, that's something to see.
Yeah, it's
what I was gonna tell you is the music.
Yes,
by Queen. And here's a legendary thing. I believe only 40%, maybe or less, of the actual soundtrack has ever been released. There's never been all the Queen music. There's so much unreleased Queen music that they recorded for this movie that, it's been,
and the same with so they did the songs, and then Michael Kamen did the orchestral score, and you can certainly hear, if you know Michael Kamen, you can certainly hear some of, I felt like I could hear a lot of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves score in some of the Celtic or Scottish sequences. But so Queen had, they didn't release a soundtrack album, but Queen obviously brought out A Kind of Magic, which had A Kind of Magic, Prince of the Universe. There was also featured Hammerfall, I think, was in there. There was a version of New York.
Yeah, that's the one I heard that Freddie Mercury hated it. He hated the song, so he didn't want anything to do. But you hear about maybe 20 seconds of it in the background of the scenes.
But that album was a huge hit. I've got that on vinyl somewhere lying around here.
I gotta say, it's part of the movie's success, almost like Flash Gordon. I mean, it really does save this movie. I mean, not this movie was hurting, but it does accentuate and makes it more of a hit.
Yeah, and it was Queen weren't the first choice. So after, I think there was a band Marillion that they were looking at, and then they were looking at David Bowie and a few others. I think Queen was going to only contribute like one song to it, and then they saw the dailies or whatever, they quite liked it, and they each member wrote like a song for a specific scene. Who Wants to Live Forever, of course. But it didn't find an audience.
No, and one of the other things about Christopher Lambert, I don't know if you know this, but he suffers from myopia, and he's basically legally blind. So it was amazing he didn't get in some serious, injuries on that set with those swords and everything, because he basically can't see that well.
Yeah.
And stuntman Vic Armstrong, who was a double for him, actually said, "Hey, can you do so? Because I can't see anything. I don't know what's going on." So literally, a lot of those times when you see that intense stare coming from him, it's only because he really can't see a damn thing in front of him. So not only could he not speak well, but he also couldn't see that very.
That's correct.
Either. Why? I guess immortals don't have glasses. They can't just sit there and go.
That's right.
So anyway,
now
the sequel.
Film, hold on. I was just going to say the film didn't do very well. There wasn't any real merchandise. The only thing I have apart from the soundtrack is the novelization.
I didn't know they had that. Was that by Alan Dean Foster?
No, it wasn't. It was by Gary Douglas, but that was a nom de plume or whatever. So I remember getting that, and that's about.
Is there a lot of bonus scenes, or do you remember?
There are some expanded, meetings between the immortals and everything like that. But I haven't read that for quite a while.
Oh,
but
I know.
I remember it being a bit more, like most novelizations, expands on some of the scenes that happen. Yeah. So the film came and went, didn't do much. The reviews were okay, but nothing great. And then it hit VHS or video, and that's when it started to reach a cult status, and it was on the top of the lists for rentals and everything like that. So they decided, wow, people like this film, let's make a sequel. So in 1991 They brought Russell Mulcahy back. They brought Christopher Lambert back. They brought
Michael
Sean Connery
Ironside.
back, which was
Yeah, which was
ridiculous
something.
because he had
He died.
died.
Yeah.
And they came up with Highlander 2, The Quickening. And I'm a bit embarrassed. I had a Highlander 2 poster in my study. And it basically threw out everything that had to do with them being immortals. They were aliens from the planet Zeist. And while it looked, I think, like stylistically, it looked quite good. The story made no sense. They were
no sense whatsoever.
No, they were trying to change fix the ozone layer.
They had a shield that was stopping the sunlight coming in. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it was ridiculous. And basically the company, the company decided to do their own edit. They cut things out. They changed things. It's one of the considered to be one of the worst films.
I was going to say the only scene I really remember from that movie is Michael Ironside as the bad guy.
Yes.
Is on his subway train.
Yes.
And he's just like yelling, and he's got some crazy get up on, and he's just terrorizing these people on the train. I saw it in the theaters. I actually went and saw it because I was like, oh, I love Highlander. And when that movie came on, I'm like, wait, what? They're aliens? What's going on here? And it's really incomprehensible, that movie. It is edited so bad. I don't even think they tried to edit it. I think they just had a pile of film and they just stitched it together and threw it out in the theaters. It's horrible. Plus, to make matters worse, they reissued it. Like they re-edited it.
They did, so Russell Mulcahy did a renegade cut, which it basically cut out all the references to the planet Zeist. They changed some lines of dialogue. And
is it any better?
It's better. Yeah. It's not great, but it at least tells a story and makes a bit more sense. Yeah. So, and that's pretty much the only version you can get now. I think there was like the renegade cut and a direct, like a director's cut or what have you. So
and then there was number 3, which my friend used to call Highlander 3, the apology, because they just kind of forgot number 2 ever happened.
They did. It was Highlander 3, the Sorcerer,
with Mario Van Peebles, more or less. He was in that one's not so bad. I remember watching that.
I saw that one in the cinemas too. And I
don't know, was Rachel Chong in that one? Rachel Day. Was the actress
Ray Dawn Chong?
Yeah, I think was she in that one? I don't
remember. It's been a while.
I can't remember who the female lead was. Yeah.
So anyway, the Sorcerer came out again. That didn't do really well, but you know what? I'm surprised they didn't do Highlander 4 Flogging a Dead Horse, but it was Highlander 4 Endgame. And that's where they introduced Adrian Paul, I believe, who was doing the TV series at the time. And this TV series ran for a number of years. I remember watching it.
Yeah.
It was quite successful. He reminded me a bit. He looked like a young Sean Connery, I felt.
He did.
He's got that. Now, has he been a guest at Terrificon?
I was just going to say, he was just here last year at Terrificon, Connecticut's Terrific Comic Con at the Mohegan Sun every summer. He was one of my guests, and he was a very delightful gentleman, and he taught sword play. We had one day, he just, people who signed up for it, and he taught you how to do all the tricks and all that stuff. But a very entertaining man. I remember him, though, actually from a short-lived TV show called War of the Worlds, which ran in syndication around here for 2 seasons, which was just a crazy show. But then I said, oh, that's Adrian Paul. But yeah, it came on. It expanded the world of the Highlander. They had a lot of guest stars on it. That's what I remember. Sheena Easton was on one episode, the songbird herself, the Scottish songbird. Bunch of other actors and stuff that would pop up on that show.
And Christopher Lambert turned up because they were originally going to have, they were saying, would you like to be in the series? And he goes, no, but he felt like it could live on as a series. So he appeared in the first episode.
Yeah.
Sort of to tie everything together.
Connor McLeod, and then this was the adventures of Duncan McLeod.
That's correct, yes. The long lost cousin's uncle's second roommate.
But Endgame, the movie, then they did a 5th one. They tried to tie in the TV show and the movies all together.
And this was not released in cinemas. There was Highlander Source, and that was a piece of garbage. Don't even.
Yeah, that was bad. Don't go watch that one.
No, there was I was going to say there was also an anime out. They brought out.
There's another TV show.
Yep.
The Raven lasted 1 season.
Okay. Yes.
Which we don't know what happened with that one. All I know is the girl that was on that had an affair with, well, supposedly had an affair with President Bill Clinton, and that was it. So we don't talk about that. But yeah, that's been long forgotten about. It was like a buddy cop show. She was like a thief or something. But no, you're right. I'm sorry I interrupted. There is an anime show, which is actually pretty well received. People say you should watch that one. There's a couple video games actually, or one that actually came out. And then there was another one I think was like what MMO. Remember when you used to have to like sign up and you'd get your own character?
Yeah, massively multiplayer online role-playing game.
Yeah, there was an attempt to do that. And then there was another one that they said was going to come out, but they never got beyond the trailer for it. So I don't know. But there was no Lunchbox. There was another Highlander cartoon show. Forget the anime. There was a syndicated cartoon show. It's horrible, but they had another Highlander show. I just remember that. How they put this on there for little kids is beyond me. It's like a show about heroes cutting people's heads off. Yeah. Kids will love them. Yeah, so look that up. There is another Highlander TV show. I just remember.
And they did in like with we're talking about with Planet of the Apes and Thunder. Recently, they have brought out some, action figures, later on, well after the fact.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've seen some like prototypes, and there's lots of fan made versions of Connor McLeod and everything out there, but there hasn't been a lot.
No, you could buy the swords. I always see the swords pop up. Like, the different blades and all that jazz. So,
but the interesting thing is that, for a series that said there can be only one, they threw that out the window, because even after all that, Henry Cavill has recently signed on for a reboot / reimagining of Highlander. They don't know what role he's playing, but that looks like that's going to be on the horizon at some point in the future.
All right. Well, there you go. Highlander never dies, I guess. He can't.
That's right. So that's Highlander. Out of 10, what would you give the movie?
The first one?
Yeah.
I'd give the first one about a 7 or 8. It's a good movie to watch on a rainy Sunday afternoon when there's nothing to do and there's nowhere to go. I'm like, oh, Highlander, let's watch that. And it's like I said, not that long. So it plays well. But I don't want to see that. And I don't want to see the wire work. Now you ruined it. I'm like, I don't want to see the enhanced version. I'll go with the fuzzy.
I've got to say, you can see the wires. You can see they use some like stop animation at a point when they're on the it looks like so when Kurgan and Ramirez are fighting on the stairs,
on the top of the
steps of the tower, so there's a bit of that. You can see in some of the shots, the aerial shots, you can see that it's obviously not Sean Connery and Christopher Lambert. It's just, body doubles and a few of those things. And some of the sensibilities are not exactly, well, they are of the time, 1986. So it's not, maybe as PC as you'd expect from today, but it is what it is. And it is still a really enjoyable film. And certainly I would say forget everything else. Maybe watch the TV series if you're into that, but definitely catch Highlander. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of interest once the Henry Cavill version comes out, if that ever does, eventuate, I guess.
Yeah. All right. I'm all set to watch it. But you know what, Ed? You know what I like watching? I like watching Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventure too. And you know what?
What? How can you find out?
Well, Ed, it's as easy as chopping the head off your arch enemy and just living forever when you absorb his energy. All you got to do is hit the subscribe button right below, and you can go to the Mitch and Ed page and see all the different episodes we have. Everything from The Love Boat to Indiana Jones to Land of the Lost to superheroes of the 70s. We have it all. And then why not hit the notification and the like button? And that wraps up another adventure of Mitch and Ed.
It certainly does. So thanks so much for watching. And don't forget, if you've got a comment on Highlander, make sure you comment below. Or if you've got a suggestion for a topic, we'd love to hear. Put that in the comments below as well. But that's it for Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventure. Thanks so much for watching. This is Ed Dollister.
Mitch Halleck.
And we'll see you next time. Take care.